Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the home brewery a good bit more than the away brewery, and the main reason for that is that the home brewery is one of the more old school names in the Japanese craft beer scene. Very well respected brewery. They do lots of different styles and always tend to do them very well in my experience, whereas the away brewery is one of the kind of newer names to hit the scene. These guys are a little bit more IPA centric, but they are very, very good within those style categories based on my experience, but they do other things too that I do still need to check out. But this collaboration I think will be quite interesting. Now this particular beer is actually part of a kind of reciprocal collaboration that these breweries did. They both brewed a beer with the same name at their respective breweries and changed the recipe a little bit, and the away breweries version of this one has featured on the channel before, and that was very, very nice actually. So I'm curious to see what the home breweries version is going to have in store for us. It's a bit weird to talk about away and home breweries when, you know, these are reciprocal collaborations, but anyway, it will make sense for the video. But the beer itself is one of the latest releases from the home brewery. It's a style that I know both breweries can do very, very well, and I'm very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit to the east of me here in Osaka, over to Mie Prefecture. We're going to go to Ise City, Ise to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Ise Kadoya Brewing. So this particular beer is called Niwa no Tori, which translates into English as Garden Bird. It comes in at 8% ABV. This is a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and this is brewed in collaboration with Inkhorn Brewing, who are from Toshima in Tokyo, and they've been featuring quite a little bit on the channel over the last little while. And when I was in Japan over Christmas, I actually reviewed their version of this beer. So this one that I have from Ise Kadoya might actually be a little bit older. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, we'll just see how we get on with this one. But both breweries very capable in this style category. Probably one of the most well-known New England hazies in Japan is the Neko Nihiki from Ise Kadoya. It's a little bit of a staple of the style, and of course West Coast Brewing and Uchu Brewing are doing some really nice beers in this category as well, but Inkhorn are a little bit smaller than both of those breweries, I think, but definitely worth checking out if you happen to come across some of their beers. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it has in store for us. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about both the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Ise Kadoya Brewing and from Inkhorn Brewing, and there will no doubt be more added to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to quite regular at the moment, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, which I highly recommend that you do, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at my brewery notes then. We'll start off with Ise Kadoya Brewing, since they are the home brewery in this case. So Ise Kadoya, as I've told you many times before, are from Ise City in Mie Prefecture in the Kansai region of Japan, and this city is dubbed the holy city of the Shinto religion, a native Japanese religion. Basically, it's all about respecting nature and taking wisdom from your ancestors, but this city, Ise, is home to over 200 Shinto shrines, notably the Ise Grand Shrine, which I visited when I was there recently. That's when I bought this beer, but yeah, it's quite an interesting visit. That it's not quite what you expect, but it is obviously a very holy place for followers of Shinto. But the city apparently gets about 5 million visitors per year, but it's a relatively small town of only 130,000 people. But the brewery itself, if we go to Ise Kadoya Brewing, the brewery was founded back in 1997 and it's owned by Narihiro Suzuki, who had previously studied microbiology at Tohoku University. And he runs the company along with his wife Chika Suzuki, who does a lot of work in the company's restaurants and other locations. And the roots of the Suzuki family business actually go back to the year 1575, when the Suzuki family started the Kadoya Cafe with the aim of selling the Kinkaku Mochi tea to the Ise pilgrims, and Narihiro is apparently the 21st generation of his family to run this company. So the full company name is now Nikenjaya Mochi Kadoya Honten, and these guys are apparently one of the oldest running companies in Japan, and I think in the world as well. But in the early days, the company struggled when the brewing side of the company struggled when the Jibiru brewery boom kind of fell flat. And in 1993 or 1994, I forget, Japan basically allowed breweries to brew as long as they could reach 200,000 litres of beer per year. And after this, you had many little breweries popping up that were brewing, alt beers, Kolsch's, things like this. A lot of them didn't survive because the quality of the beer wasn't great, and it was also quite expensive in comparison to the German imports and Belgian imports, which did have the consistency. So yeah, many of these breweries just died. But Ise Kadoya are one of the success stories. So when they started to suffer a little bit in the early days, they took a bit of a gamble and started producing Shinto beers as a kind of souvenir for the pilgrims. And this was what kept the brewery side of the business going through the difficult times. And it was only in 2010 that the Ise Kadoya beers, the more American style craft beers, actually started to outperform the Shinto beers. But the brewmaster at Ise Kadoya is Masakazu Nakanishi, who joined the company in 1997, having worked an office job, but he'd actually studied fermentation in high school during his agriculture classes, and the brewery were apparently looking for a brewer at the time he was just finishing his work contract, and so it was a perfect fit and he joined them. But he later became the brewmaster in 1999, and another instrumental man in this brewery that we should mention is Yoshihiro Matsuoka, who is one of the main guys in the kind of restaurant side of things. He's also the label designer as well, and he's known as the walking beer dictionary because his knowledge of beer is just a little bit ridiculous. He knows a hell of a lot. But this brewery import various hops and malts from across the world. They use water from the local Miyagawa River, which is filtered through charcoal microfilters, and it's very, very good for brewing. You can taste that in the beers, but they're apparently very thorough in their quality control as well, and they've won many different awards for their beers to date. They're one of the most decorated craft breweries in Japan, but they've got a number of restaurants, and the two notable ones are Biyagura, which is the on-site restaurant, and then they've also got the Ise Kadoya Kaikumaiten, which is quite close to the Ise Grand Shrine, and that's one that I do hope to go and film at with Jordan from Inside or Outside Japan at some point. So you'll see an out and about video there. I'm sure. But these guys also have a core range of beers, various seasonal beers. They also produce cider, soy sauce, tamari, miso paste, and also the Kinako Mochi tea. But in 2018, they opened up a new brewery, which has given them the capacity to brew 650,000 litres of beer per year. And on the back of that, they've started canning a number of their beers, and you can find these across Japan. I think Ise Kadoya are the first Japanese craft brewery that have really put their beers out there across the whole country, in fact. And that's been quite refreshing to see. But they started canning those core beers, and they're starting to export abroad a little bit now as well, from what I understand. But as of February 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 500 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you, these guys are quite cool because they do have that core range of beer, but they're still pretty damn experimental, and they're putting out things like this, which is always interesting. So if you get the chance to try some of the Ise Kadoya beers, I really don't think you're going to be disappointed with them, and they are absolutely worth trying. But that's everything I can really tell you about Ise Kadoya for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to let's go on then, and we'll talk about the away brewery in this case, which is Inkhorn Brewing. So Inkhorn Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Toshima in Tokyo, and the main man behind this company is Shun Nakade, who is originally from Koto Ward in Tokyo, and he runs the company along with his wife Amy Holdsworth, who is originally from Connecticut in New England in the northeastern US. But apparently Shun's parents were really into kind of fine food and drink, and this rubbed off on him quite a little bit. But he attended high school in Oregon in the US Pacific Northwest, and then moved to Seattle to study music theory and psychology. And it was during this time that he discovered craft beer, although he didn't recognize it as such as the time. He didn't recognize it as such a kind of specialized field. But when he returned to Japan, he was wondering why he couldn't find beers that were similar to what he was drinking in the US, and he really missed them. So very quickly he started frequenting German and Belgian beer bars, and during the 2010s he was working in administration and as a translator and interpreter, but he also started to try his hand at home brewing as well, to try and replicate some of those American beers that he enjoyed so much. But in 2018, he became involved in the launch of a brew pub called Pitman's in Koto, and it was here that he began to, he really began to get hands-on with brewing. This was his first opportunity to brew commercially, and after a while, he was left to his own devices, and he also helped brew at Choshi Beer and then at Tsukuba Brewery as well. But by 2020, he had decided that he wanted to open up his own project, and he started traveling around the country, collaborating with other breweries until he eventually opened up his own space in 2021. So he chose the name Inkhorn for his brewery as a reference to the animal horn inkwells that were popularly used by European scholars in the 16th and 17th century. And Shun says these were a kind of source of inspiration for him because the ink transforms into words. And at the time, European scholars were debating using foreign words in English to describe things, and he feels that he's bringing some of the foreign beer culture into Japan, and he thinks it's quite a nice metaphor, basically. I hope that's an adequate description of the name. That's the kind of impression I got from reading the articles in Japan Beer Times and stuff like that. But the taproom space that these guys have has been designed by Amy, who has a passion for birds and avian conservation, and this is also the inspiration behind much of the artwork that you'll get from Inkhorn as well. And you can see that this particular label, the Ise Kadoya have, is obviously more along the lines of what you would expect from Inkhorn. But when the brewery started, they were equipped with two 5-barrel 600 litre and two 10-barrel 1200 litre tanks, and the brewing capacity has basically just been scaled up over the years to meet demand. Quite recently they started canning their beers, and they've obviously been working to get them across the country, which has been quite successful, and they're starting to collaborate, I think, with a number of other breweries across the country too, and start to get their name out there a little bit more abroad. But as of February 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 110 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I think it is fair to say that at the moment, Inkhorn are more of a kind of IPA-centric brewery, but they do very, very nice beers in this particular category, both West Coast and New England hazy, in my experience. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about them, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a wee look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it's a little bit more along the lines of what you would expect from Inkhorn rather than Ise Kadoya, but Niwa no Tori just translates into English as garden bird, and there you can see the regular Ise Kadoya bottle cap on this one. I still love the camera on this phone. It gives you really, really nice clear pictures. But yeah, as we mentioned earlier, this one comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And this one has an all New Zealand hop bill in it, which is quite interesting. So this one is hopped with Nelson Sauvin, which is 16% alpha acid. It gives you that lovely kind of gooseberry, white, green, grapey character. Motueka, which is 8% alpha acid. It gives you quite a juicy, limey character. And then there's Nectaron in there, which is going to give you quite an interesting sort of orangey character, but quite a wee bit of peach and kind of apricot-y notes as well, actually. But yeah, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA, this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what we have. Really curious about this. But yeah, this is one of the beers that I picked up on my recent trip over to Ise when my parents were visiting. And I think this is the third of 4 that I'm filming from Ise Kadoya this time. The Monologue West Coast IPA was one. We had the Tori, which was a lovely New England IPA, and now we got this one as well. And I've got a big Imperial Stout that I'm saving for a later date. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured quite interestingly. There's a lovely finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. With this one you can see medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there, but as you move further up, it's got a little bit more of a kind of fluffy head to it. And you can see the colour of this one is quite like a kind of peach or pineapple, sort of pineapple mango juice type colour there, but it's certainly very, very hazy. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role as well, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that with different kinds of IPA. But the haze level on this one is pretty damn impressive, actually. This is, you know, cloudy as fuck, basically. But yeah, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer. But this is certainly one of the soupiest and gloopiest New Englands I've come across in Japan. Now, the head is just fading away to be a kind of thinner foamy layer at the moment, but you've got that nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass there. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, but I think at this point we don't need to say too much more about the appearance of this beer. It is pretty much what you would expect from the New England hazy style. So let's go on and have a little look at the aroma and see what it has in store for us. Oh yeah, that's quite interesting. First impression of this one, very, very grassy smelling New England IPA. Not quite what I was expecting, I have to say. But yeah, lovely big kind of fresh, wet, cut grass note out of this. Good juicy fruity notes in there. It's interesting too, because the malty character in this one takes a bit of a back seat. I'm getting a lot of like barley malt out of this, and as I've said in many New England reviews, for me these beers, you should think about 6 elements when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of things. You've got the kind of farmhousey yeasty side of things and the rye leaning grainy side. Those are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, but then you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. Now for me, I get a good little bit of oat out of this one as well, but quite a lot of barley malt, and there's maybe a little bit of that kind of more farmhousey, yeasty side of things. We do have to remember though that this beer might not be at its optimum freshness, because I reviewed the Inkhorn version of this a couple of months ago at Christmas, so maybe this one is going to be about 2 or 3 months old, and that means that the oats will come across as being a little bit drier, and that would give the impression of that more kind of barley malt character that I'm getting from this one. But let's just break down that aroma and describe it for you a bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh white bready character coming out of it. You can get some of that fresh white bready bread crust just forming the backbone of the beer. There's a little bit of a slightly woody character in there as well. But that's not too prominent. We touch a kind of Jacob's cream cracker. Fresh white bready notes sitting in this one as well. Yeah, fresh white bready bread crust from the backbone of the beer. A little bit of woodiness, a little bit of cracker, but a lot of kind of like fluffy white bread in this one. I do get a little touch of bitiness from the wheat at the back of the nose, but I'm getting quite a bit of oatiness out of this beer. And as I've said in New England reviews many a time, oats are usually a good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier they are and smell, the fresher the beer is, the older they are, the drier it is. And I'm getting quite a wee bit of oatiness, quite a wee bit of dryness out of the oaty character in this beer. I'd also point out that this is not one of the sweeter New England IPAs that I've come across. It does come across as being a little bit more kind of porridgey and oaty rather than having too much in the way of sweetness. Now I do get a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit coming out of it, but yeah, otherwise it's it's mainly a kind of bready, oaty and crackery sort of note that I'm getting out of this one, which is quite interesting. But I think that's everything we need to say about the yeasty side of the beer. Let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of things. Now the green component in this one is interesting. I get a feeling from it that it's it's pellets that have been used in this one. And yeah, the thing with IPAs is that there are three kinds of hoppings you can do. Early addition hopping takes place within the first hour of the wort boil, gives you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker aroma. Late addition hopping, which gives you quite a lot of flavour and aroma, a little bit of bitterness, and that gives you a very bright green component in your aroma. And then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, it gives you a very bright green component in your flavour and aroma. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all three, which is why they have that deeper, danker aroma. With this one, you get a very bright green component. There's a little touch of earthiness in there, nice bright floral aromaticity, quite spicy as well, which I would say is most likely down to the Nelson Sauvin. And then you've also got this very nice kind of bright zesty grassiness, which I think is most likely down to the Motueka. Nectaron, as I say, I'm not overly familiar with that because it's a fairly new hop, but I have had it a good few times and I do like it. But yeah, the green component doesn't come to me off the top of my head, I have to say. But yeah, nice bright zesty grassiness, big floral aromaticity. It goes together quite nicely. Let's just round off the aroma with a wee look at the fruity side of things then. So for me, yeah, the Nelson Sauvin is the one that's kind of forming the backbone of this beer. So you get that lovely kind of white grapey, gooseberry type note, which I think is lovely. So fresh, you know, white grape, gooseberry type notes. You've got some really, really nice, yeah, you have some very, very nice sort of, you get a lot of juicy and quite zesty lime out of this one, and I'm surprised with Motueka. I always find Motueka a bit more juicy, whereas you compare it to the American Equinox. Equinox a bit more zesty, but seem to get quite a bit of zestiness out of the limey side of things here. But behind that, there's definitely, I get the peachy kind of sharpness from the Nectaron. There's also a bit of that softer apricot in there, and I'm getting a good wee bit of, I do get a little touch of orange out of it. Nectaron always, I think, had a little bit of orange to it as well. So yeah, wee bit of tropical fruit in this one, but a really interesting balance to the fruity character in this beer. But it smells lovely, as I always say. Take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, the Niwa no Tori, Garden Bird in English, a collaboration between Ise Kadoya Brewing in Ise Miya Prefecture and Inkhorn Brewing, who are from Toshima in Tokyo. This should be quite nice. 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai. Oh yeah, that's very, very nice. It's got a lovely smoothness to it, really quite creamy, very smooth. I wonder if they've rebrewed this, or if Ise Kadoya have released their version of this beer a little bit later. They might well have done a re-release, right enough, come to think of it. A little bit of sediment in the bottom of the bottle there as well, but yeah, the Tori Koro that we reviewed from Ise Kadoya was very good as well. Maybe Ise Kadoya are just very on point with these New England hazies at the moment, but this is a very, very impressive beer actually. So thumbs up to Ise Kadoya and Inkhorn as well. The beers I've had from Inkhorn have been really damn good too. But yeah, very smooth, very creamy New England IPA. Nice little bit of green component to it. Very soft and fruity, just very, very easy to drink. A bit dangerously drinkable when you consider this thing is 8% ABV. But yeah, let's do as we always do. We'll break the beer down and describe that flavour a wee bit more in depth for you. We'll start on the middle third of the palate. So, middle third of the palate then. I would say the backbone of the beer is that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust. The further forward you go on that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of crackery, you get a little touch of a kind of crackery note to this one, maybe a teeny little hint of wood, but yeah, you've got the fresh white bready bread crust, a little bit of a cracker sitting on top of this one. And then yeah, Jacob's cream cracker, and then it's all about this kind of, there's a lovely kind of sweet bready layer in there. It feels like it's a little bit brown bready underneath, white bready on top, and then you can feel there's a little bit of a more dense there's a little bit of a more dense wheaty character in this one too. Yeah, so yeah, you've got these layers. Yeah, sweet brown bread, fluffy white bread, a little bit of a more dense wheaty white bread, and that wheaty layer's just got a little bit of bite to it as well, which is quite interesting. And then yeah, above that you start to get the kind of oaty side of the beer as well. And it's interesting because I was getting quite a bit of dryness from the oats, from the aroma, but in the actual flavour they come across as very creamy. And this is an interesting thing that I noticed when I was trying a lot of American beers over the summer. American oats are just a little bit drier than European oats, I would say. Whereas the American wheat is a little bit smoother. So you notice things like this. You know, you can grow the same plant in different countries, and because of the different soil profiles, you're going to get different flavours to it. But yeah, the oaty character in this beer is absolutely lovely. So you have a really nice with this beer, when you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel that quite dense, creamy, oaty character. And as you move out toward the edges of your palate, you can feel the creaminess is there, but it just gets a little bit drier actually. And I do really like how that goes together. So yeah, big creamy oaty notes in there down the middle of your tongue, then a wee bit of just a fresher oaty note coming out of this one too. But if you go to the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a nice little bit. You do get a wee bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing from the booziness of the beer. Then there's maybe just a little hint of biscuit as you go out from that centre of your tongue. But yeah, it's really nice how just all of that kind of pieces together actually. Yeah, it's interesting, this one. Really the malty base in this one I think is done very nicely, and I think that's where when I think about the Tori that I had from these guys as well, from Ise Kadoya, it was the same. They've just got a really nice balance between their malty and yeasty flavours in these beers, which is great. But I think we've covered the middle third of the palate with this one. Let's go to the back third of your palate. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at kind of different intensities and things. But the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of kind of brown bread on the base, the white bread on top, and you can feel a wee bit of the wheaty bitiness on the top of that too. But the base of the back third of your palate is the same. You've got that fresh white bready bread crust in there, the Jacob's cream cracker, then you've got that wholemeal brown bready sort of layer, which is a little bit lighter, more airy. Then you've got the fluffy white bread layer in there, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. And then you can feel the wheaty character just sitting on top of that, which is a bit more kind of bitey and things too. So yeah. And yeah, so you can feel that layer on the back third of the palate is really quite tall and very nicely done. But yeah, you can feel the wheaty bitiness on top there. Then above everything else, you start to get the yeasty side of the beer. So you've got a dense, sweet, white bready character in the middle. A little bit more of a kind of airy, farmhousey white bready character further out. And then you just get a wee bit of crustiness on the... yeah, you've just got a little bit of that airy crustiness coming out of the beer as well on the yeasty side of things too. So that yeasty layer that you get out of this New England IPA is really nice too. But definitely, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more, which I think is really nice. So yeah, good mix of stuff going on in this one. So yeah, the malty yeasty side of this beer is really nicely done. I think that's what's making some of these Ise Kadoya New England IPAs really on point at the moment. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, the green component in the back corners of your palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. But as you move further forward, it gives you a little bit of herbal character. And as you push further forward along the sides of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity and things like that. So yeah, nice little bit of floral aromaticity, good little bit of kind of piney resin in there as well. Then round the front curve of the tongue, you get that little bit of lighter grassiness there. And it's got a wee touch of zestiness to it as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really nice. Yeah, green component in this one just balances out the malty side of things too. The wheat, because in the aftertaste you get a bit more wheaty bitiness, then you've got a wee bit more of a pungent green component, which I think is really nice in this beer as well. But yeah, interesting. Let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the more kind of fruity side of things coming out of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of brown bread in the base, white bread on top, maybe a little touch of wheaty bitiness there. But yeah, you can feel the bread crust on the base, the brown bread layer on top of that, the white bread, and then you get that nice little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that fruity side of things just to round off the tasting section. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get some really nice kind of just like very juicy peachy notes, and that's the nectaron, of course, that's giving you that. As you move further forward, you start to get the apricot-y kind of mangoey and orangey notes. It's quite orangey, this beer, as you move to the front, just toward the middle of that front third of your palate. Then underneath the front half of the front third of your tongue, you've got a good little bit of a kind of oily, you do have a good little bit of a kind of oily gooseberry sort of thing, and then the kind of juicier lime from the Motueka. So yeah, the Nelson Sauvin sits underneath on the front half of the front third of your palate, then the Motueka, the more kind of juicy limey character, sits on top of that. So yeah, the way that this goes together is really quite nice. Yeah, fruity side of the beer is really good with this one, and I think it has a nice balance between tropical and the more kind of citrusy side of things too. And obviously the Nelson Sauvignon is giving you that more oily component as well. The fruity side of this beer goes together very well. This is one of these beers where everything just kind of fits together very well, and the end result is really very, very nice. So as I say, this beer gets a massive thumbs up from me, and both Ise Kadoya and Inkhorn are very capable in this particular style category as well. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as being, it's actually very light and drinkable. I'd say it's mid-bodied, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is very smooth. It has a little bit of cleanliness to it, but at the same time, you know, you have that lovely kind of, you've got a slight creaminess to it, but not overly much. IBU wise, I think this is 50 or 60 IBUs. It gives you a little bit of a lingering bitterness into the aftertaste, but the malt base has a really nice kind of graininess to it. You've got the lovely bready characters in there, and then just a little bit of sweetness from the malt base too. But yeah, good little bit of fruitiness in there as well. It's quite a soft, juicy, fruity character, and I think that goes together really nicely. But yeah, lovely, lovely beer, this one, and I wouldn't expect anything less of Ise Kadoya Brewing or of Inkhorn Brewing. Both breweries really know how to do this this particular style category. Inkhorn, of course, I'm still familiarising myself with, but I think Ise Kadoya, from that perspective, I know these guys quite well. They're kind of they're doing very good New Englands at the moment. They're really on point with this style. And I think at that, we've said everything we need to about this one. So yeah, this is the Niwa no Tori from Ise Kadoya Brewing in Ise, Mie Prefecture here in Japan. A collaboration with Inkhorn Brewing, the second of the kind of reciprocal collaboration beers that these guys did. Beautiful beer, this one. Certainly a bit more hazy than the Inkhorn version was. That was more of a kind of West Coasty American type IPA, but this is really, really lovely. And as I say, Ise Kadoya are doing some really good beers in the hazy category at the moment. But let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ise Kadoya and Inkhorn Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers. Catch you guys in the next review. Check out my social media, check out the brewery social media, and I'll see you guys soon. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and Kampai.